Happy Thursday. Well, minutes apart, you really can't script this, but minutes apart earlier today, the Rams signed Odell Beckham Jr., and the 49ers finally waived Jalen Hurd. So, a tale of two receivers, a tale of two franchises, a tale of two different situations, completely symbolic of where both of these teams who face off on Monday Night Football are right now. The Rams are stocking up for a title run. Odell Beckham Jr. was interested in joining them. He was not interested in joining the 49ers because they're currently 3-5. And one of the main reasons, and probably the main reason the 49ers are 3-5, is that they have not gotten the return on investment that they've needed from their draft picks. And they've been very injured. Well, with Jalen Hurd, you have both of those problems rolled into one player. So Jalen Hurd was waived finally. 3+ seasons with the 49ers. 2019, 2+ seasons, 2.5 seasons with the 49ers. Not a single snap from Jalen Hurd. Will always have that highlight reel against the Cowboys in the 2019 preseason. That was really the cause for so much hope and the cause for so much frustration. Those 2 touchdowns against Dallas, week 1. I mean, if you think about it, the 2019 season was like a jolt of adrenaline for the 49ers. Some people anticipated a good year. I don't think anybody saw 13-3, NFC title appearance, Super Bowl appearance coming. The 49ers themselves, if you talk to Kyle Shanahan, he says that the plan was for 2020 to be the year in the 4-year build. So the 49ers hit a lot of glory. They didn't reach ultimate glory, but they hit a lot of glory a season early in 2019. And if you think about it, the first adrenaline injection of that season came in the preseason. It was Jalen Hurd in week 1 against the Cowboys with those 2 touchdowns, running over people, heading into the end zone, and catching the fade ball, I believe, from C.J. Beathard later in the football game. But then we didn't see Jalen Hurd on the field again until the preseason of 2021 when he looked like a shell of his former self against the Raiders. So injuries took it away. I mean, you could blame the 49ers for drafting players with injury histories. Jalen Hurd was not one of those players, although he had some mileage on him from being a power back at Tennessee and the SEC and then a receiver at Baylor. It probably isn't overly surprising that he did have some back issues later on. And then obviously the ACL came out of nowhere, but that happens. I mean, it was just a guy that once he reached NFL level couldn't stay healthy. It's too bad for the 49ers because the skill set, bringing that SEC power back pedigree, combining it with outside receiver from the Big 12 capability, that would have fit perfectly in Kyle Shanahan's amorphous offense. He's going for that positionless offense, right, where he can throw to running backs and hand off to wide receivers. Jalen Hurd seemed like a dream fit on paper and based on that game against Dallas, but he couldn't stay healthy. And at the end of the day, the 49ers cut their losses about halfway through this 2021 season. They gain a couple $100,000 in salary cap space. It doesn't really help them on the 2021 books. They gain a little over $1 million for 2022. So that's room to do a little bit more work on the rest of the roster. And I think that, people ask why now. I think that the 49ers finally came to the 100% certain realization that Jalen Hurd wasn't going to be able to fully recover into the vision of what they had in 2019 by this point. There was no chance for regret anymore from the 49ers. And I think early in the season, because he was coming off an ACL tear, and sometimes it takes more than a year for guys to fully come back from an ACL tear, they wouldn't have carried him on the 53-man roster earlier in the season. I think the 49ers felt that there might have still been a chance. They would have still been saying, what if? But now after they've seen that knee injury is just not coming back to 100%, they have realized they can cut all ties. And it's symbolic because, again, this player and Jalen Hurd represents everything that's gone wrong with the 49ers, or at least most of it. Failed draft picks, injuries, all rolled into one, into this promising receiver that we saw in 2019. People started, all the fan accounts started calling him the cyborg and making all those cool Photoshops. There was an idea that was Jalen Hurd. There was a whisper that was Jalen Hurd, but it was never realized to complete fruition. And that illustrates what the 49ers are right now. a lot of talented players, a lot of potential, a lot of people talking about a talented roster, but a 3-5 record because they're not good enough at the margins. And as Kyle Shanahan said today, and this is true, they haven't been good enough at the superstar positions either. The stars like Fred Warner aren't carrying this football team. George Kittle isn't carrying this football team. Big fumble for George in the game on Sunday. He's missed games due to injury. Has already been, obviously on IR. Brandon Ayuk, one of the stars of 2020, finally starting to come along here in 2021, but he hasn't been the man that the 49ers needed him to be. They have, they didn't get anything from Raheem Mostert outside of 2 snaps. He's not going to walk back through that door for this season. Nick Bosa, yeah, he's playing well, but it can't be a one-man show on defense. So the 49ers have been not getting the productivity they need from several different levels, margins included. I talked about the margins in a different video. I talked about it in an article. You're seeing it now in 2019, that magical season during which Jalen Hurd even produced in the preseason because he didn't play a single regular season snap. But during that season, the 49ers got a lot from guys like Daniel Brunskill, the right guard right now. They overcame injuries, similar to how the Cardinals overcame injuries against the 49ers last Sunday. The 49ers had the depth at the margins they don't have today, and you could trace that all back to A, injuries, and B, draft picks that aren't panning out. Now, John Lynch just came on the radio on KMBR and said that he does believe this 2021 draft class will pan out, but obviously he has to say that. He can't just give up on the guys right now. And I agree from a perspective standpoint that it's too early right now to declare anybody a bust. But the problem for the 49ers is that they're not, especially their 2021 hopes, for which they pushed a lot of chips into the middle of the table. The definition of the word bust doesn't really matter to them. They need production now, and they need it from these rookies right now. And the timeline, the deadline for all that has sped up because their starting right tackle, Mike McGlinchey, is now up for the season. So the Aaron Banks pick now means something in the present tense. It's not just a future tense. Okay, what's Aaron Banks going to do as he develops into 2022 and 2023? The 49ers need something out of their second-round pick now. The secondary has obviously been terrible for the 49ers in massive stretches of this season. They need something from Deommodore Lenoir or Ambry Thomas, preferably their third-round pick now, right? The 49ers are at that juncture where, yes, they're playing this long game alongside the short game. But if they don't want the short game to go completely up in flames, they need something from those draft picks now. And Jalen Hurd, they waived him today. He symbolizes what they haven't gotten from their draft picks. And he also symbolizes what the 49ers hope to not repeat, and that is zero production from draft picks. Over the last 3 games, the 49ers have gotten a total of 0 snaps from their first, second, and third round draft picks. That's 4 different players of the 2021 class. That just won't cut it. 0 snaps from Trey Lance. Obviously, they want to get him in on package play. Haven't been able to do it. 0 snaps from Aaron Banks. Obviously, the 49ers now need a right guard so that Daniel Brunskill can prevent them from playing Tom Compton or Jalen Moore at right tackle. Doesn't look like it's going to happen right away because Kyle Shanahan today said that Aaron Banks' pass protection is not where it needs to be yet. They've gotten 0 snaps from Ambry Thomas in that third round and 0 snaps from Trey Sermon, the running back in the third round. So the positions where the 49ers have needed production this season, they're getting whiffs so far from that draft class, and that's where they are. That's why they are at their current spot. Now, I see this game coming up against the Rams, especially since Odell Beckham Jr. is now with the Rams, which is an interesting embarrassment of riches at receiver because the Rams run their offense through Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. Obviously, adding that third receiver into the mix, I mean, Deshaun Jackson, who's no longer with the Rams, was complaining about a lack of playing time. So it might be hard to carve out some time for Odell Beckham Jr. But even if he doesn't produce all too much for the Rams, from a symbolic perspective, this is interesting to me because he was a free agent. He had full reign over where he was going to go, right? And the 49ers at one point were the it team. Odell Beckham Jr. was walking up to John Lynch in 2018 before the Giants and the 49ers played on Monday Night Football and telling John Lynch, get me here, get me here. Odell Beckham Jr. was walking up to Jimmy Garoppolo off the 49ers and the Browns played in 2019 and saying, I'm coming here. He was going to find a way to force his way into San Francisco. So in both 2018, when the 49ers had a losing record, and 2019, when they were good, they had star power from other places in the league wanting to bang down the door and come play for them. The 49ers were the it team, and you could trace that all the way back probably to the last 5 games of 2017 when Jimmy Garoppolo took over as the starting quarterback. Jimmy G Magic, 49ers went 5-0. And then even amongst losing times in 2018, while Garoppolo had a torn ACL, the 49ers maintained that vibe of positivity, of upward trajectory, and obviously that continued into 2019. At some point after the Super Bowl, or maybe it was during the Super Bowl when the 49ers blew the lead, they lost that it team feel, that it team designation. And it's officially dead with the final nail in the coffin with what happened today, with Odell Beckham Jr. free to go anywhere at a very low cost. So money was not an issue here. It's not a situation in which the 49ers were being too cheap. It was a situation where Odell Beckham Jr. didn't want to come to the 49ers. Rams are going to get him on probably the minimum, with the Browns paying most of his money for this season without offset language in the $4 million. So this is not a salary cap issue. This is not a 49ers front office not pursuing someone hard enough issue. This is an issue the 49ers no longer being the it team. The Rams right now, of course, they're the it team. They're 7-2. They're marching their way toward the playoffs. They're in a battle with the Cardinals for the NFC West division lead. And Odell Beckham Jr. believes that a spot on this Rams team gives him a chance to win a ring, because it definitely isn't the best spot for him to get as many catches as possible, for him to bolster his free agency value ahead of next season as much as possible. When you've got Cooper Kupp and the offense going through him, Odell Beckham Jr. theoretically is going to have to compete for that if he's just trying to stat hoard. But I think that he wants to win a title. He wants to be with the team, and we've seen it throughout his career, whispering in John Lynch's ear in 2018 that he wants to be there, whispering in Jimmy Garoppolo's ear in 2019 that he wants to be with the 49ers. Odell Beckham Jr. has wanted to be with the it team, and the 49ers are no longer that. For me, that makes this Monday's game against the Rams ultra symbolic. It's tempting to feel that this game will either be the last hurrah of the 49ers as we know them right now, right? Garoppolo at quarterback, Fred Warner on defense, Bosa on defense, that whole collection of talent. And this could be the last hurrah where, they go out there and they beat Sean McVay again. I mean, Sean McVay has never beaten a 49ers team quarterback by Jimmy Garoppolo. So the 49ers have that magic going for them, right? Even though they're underdogs in this game. So it's tempting to think that either it's going to be the last hurrah for those 49ers, they somehow, some way find a way to beat the star-laden Rams, or it's going to be a situation in which the 49ers just get the crap beaten out of them by the rising Rams, the it team of 2021, and this version of the 49ers, which has been leaking oil here now for weeks, will finally be put to rest. Now, mathematically, the 49ers cannot be eliminated on Monday night. There's too much parity in the NFL right now, especially in the NFC, for something like that to happen just based on one game or even a string of games. And probably to take 8 or 9 losses for the 49ers to be firmly mathematically eliminated. They're only at 5 right now. So, whatever, they'll keep on fighting, do this and do that. But from a symbolic perspective, it's really a chance for the Rams to take the torch from the 49ers, who, I mean, I get it, 2020, the Rams and the Seahawks were at the top of the division, but that just kind of felt like a lost season. I really do feel that, with the COVID issues and with the injury issues of the 49ers, the team to unseat in the NFC since 2019, because 2020 was such a wash, and an NFC West, obviously, by extension, has been the 49ers. And now we finally have some normalcy. And now the Rams are stocking up. Obviously, they already went all in with Stafford in this offseason. Then they got Von Miller a couple weeks ago. Odell Beckham Jr. was not an example of investing a lot in one player. Odell Beckham Jr. was an example of a player wanting to come to the Rams because they had already showcased that they were headed in the right direction. The coup de grace for kind of the changing the guard could be a smackdown of the 49ers on Monday Night Football. Or it can be the 49ers with one last gasp going out there and upsetting a favored Rams team that's now loaded up with some of the star power. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm predicting the Rams will likely win because they have more talent, especially on both fronts. That has nothing to do with Odell Beckham Jr., but there's a reason they play these games. And to me, it's going to be interesting because the 49ers are in such a state of turmoil right now, given the injuries, given the roster turnover, given what seems like a lack of direction, a lack of leadership. We'll see if maybe this game against the rival, against whom they've had success lately, will be something that can turn them around. That's why we play the games. So let's take some questions. Happy Veterans Day to the veterans out there watching this show. November 11th every year. I'm happy they make Veterans Day. They don't just make it on a random Monday. I'm glad that it follows the date. So last year it was on a Wednesday. This year it's on a Thursday. And happy Veterans Day to everybody. Thank you for your service. Quack Attack 49er, where should I begin? No leadership, no discipline, 9 straight losses at home, 5 losses in the last 6 games. Yeah, I mean, the discipline is a big issue. The leadership, I think, also a big issue. I mean, 49ers have been playing without a real spine, real verve for a while. I talked about this a few weeks ago. You thought that maybe that game against Chicago would allow them to regain their footing. I think that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch both thought that, but they go back home and, they get stomped on by a Colt McCoy-led Arizona team that was down like 5 really key players. So they're running out of time to get this right. And from the leadership chasm, Jimmy Garoppolo is probably the leader of this team because they don't – that's the player they gravitated around on their rise. Obviously, all of the Trey Lance stuff and the trade for the draft and the incorporation of Trey Lance to the offense this offseason took a lot of the spotlight away from Jimmy Garoppolo, but I think the whole time he's still been Shanahan's central figure. The problem is that he has not been able to successfully incorporate the dual quarterback room this year, right? We're not seeing any playtime for Lance, so that kind of feels like a waste as far as 2021 concerns, are at play. And Jimmy Garoppolo has played better the last 2 weeks, but due to the injury and due to, the up and down spineless nature of the 49ers first few weeks, that hasn't taken hold yet. So the 49ers feel like a rudderless ship right now. They're desperately trying to gain that sense of direction. They think they can get it with Garoppolo and with spot duty for Lance, but it's becoming a tougher and tougher proposition to sell for them every week. And, the results of this are no home win since they last faced the Rams over 365 days ago. By the way, the 49ers wore their road jerseys during that game. Now, what was really interesting to me, in that game of the 49ers beat the Rams, they went back to the 2019 playbook. It was a throwback kind of game in a season that saw a lot of 49ers offensive line struggles, but the 49ers ran the ball 40 times. That's a lot. That was the Deadpool package, Deebo Samuel running laterally, Raheem Mostert getting to the edge, and the 49ers really made sure that they played that game on their terms to neutralize that Rams defensive front. They're going to have to do something similar in this game. But the problem is that they're now down Mike McGlinchey, so they are at an even bigger disadvantage up front. We know that Von Miller operates against right tackle, and also the 49ers defense has completely fallen off of the cliff. Throughout 2019 and 2020 and the very early parts of 2021, the 49ers always had that as a fallback, right? That defense would at least be decent. But now that it's eroded and fallen off the cliff, the matchup of the 49ers against the Rams is a lot worse than it was last year when they beat them 2 times, which is why I think there shouldn't be a lot of optimism about this 49ers team right now. That being said, sometimes something else shows up, a different gear shows up when a fighter's back is up against the wall. So the 49ers backs are up against the wall right now. Maybe they respond, but like I said, this is either a situation of they respond against odds stacked up against them, or they go down in a whimper and the Rams grab that torch and it's the Rams and the Cardinals roaring the rest of the way with Russell Wilson trying to challenge them. So to me, it really is an inflection point. And I thought that the Jalen Hurd news today, which represents so many of the 49ers struggles, and the Odell Beckham news, which represents so many of the Rams' successes. And, you know, I'm not even saying that Odell Beckham Jr. is going to be a great pickup for the Rams, but it just is emblematic of the Rams' strategy. The fact that those two things happened today, the waiving and the signing, they happened, within 10 minutes of each other? 3 days before the 49ers, or 4 days before the 49ers and the Rams are set to play. I thought there was real symbolism in that, and it's going to be interesting how it all pans out starting on Monday. I know how a lot of people expect it to pan out, so we'll see if that's going to be true. The loss of Mostert, then how the game ended against Detroit. Oh, you're talking about the 49ers' loss of Mojo. I agree. I mean, Mostert was a huge part of this team's offensive plans. It took a while for Elijah Mitchell to kick into gear, and by that point, the 49ers were already derailed. The way the game ended against Detroit, I don't put much stock into how the game actually ended, because it happened after the Jason Verrett injury, which really derailed the 49ers, but I do put stock into what happened near the end of that game against Detroit. And that's when Jason Verrett was hurt. And that is a hinge point that the 49ers backed themselves into, that they shouldn't have backed themselves into. Who could have possibly guessed that such an often-injured player like Jason Verrett would get hurt? Well, the 49ers put so many of their secondary eggs in that basket, and then he tore his ACL there toward the end against Detroit. And I think that started this domino effect that we reached today. 49ers didn't lose, though, until they blew that lead against the Packers with 37 seconds left. They would have been 3-0. Narratives would have been very different had that happened. Maybe even Odell Beckham Jr. wants to come to the 49ers if they hold on against Green Bay. But the secondary and the defense as a whole blew that lead late against Green Bay. And I still think you could probably chase that back to Jason Verrett's injury at the end against Detroit. If Verrett doesn't get hurt against the Lions, probably I think the 49ers secondary holds on with 37 seconds left against the Packers 3 weeks later. 49ers move to 3-0. That losing streak is obviously not nearly as severe. Stuff doesn't go off the rails. But you can play what if all day. The point is the 49ers are where they are right now, and that is not a good spot. That's a spot that's the culmination of a lot of the roster struggles, the injury struggles that have come over years before, but have kind of reached their tipping point right now. Now, it's a glorious opportunity to fight back against the Rams. Nobody's just sure if the 49ers have it in them. And that's why we're going to talk more as this week progresses. All right, time for me to go get some food. Everybody take care. Have a good night. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll have more for you as the 49ers and the Rams approach on Monday night.